They told me to pack up my dead sister's room like it was just another chore. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew this wasn't a room anymore. It was a mausoleum, and the dolls she left behind weren't just watching. They were waiting. The door to Lily's room hadn't been opened in months, not since the funeral. My parents didn't talk about it, didn't even glance in that direction when they passed the hallway. But today they finally said the words I had been dreading. Alex, we need to start packing up her things. I don't know what hit me. Harder, the sound of her name or the realization that this house would never feel normal again. I nodded without a word, following my dad up the stairs. He handed me a cardboard box, already half assembled. You don't have to rush. Just take your time. Then he left me alone in front of the door. The knob felt ice cold in my hand as I turned it. The hinges let out a low creak like the room itself was protesting, and when I stepped inside, I could feel it instantly, the heaviness in the air. It was stale, untouched, like someone had sealed the room away from time itself. Lily's scent still lingered, something sweet, like baby powder and old wood. Everything was exactly where she had left it. Her bed neatly made, the pink canopy, hanging slightly askew. Her posters, her books, her little nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. But the dolls, they were the first thing I noticed. Hundreds of them, lining the walls on creaky wooden shelves, porcelain, plastic, cloth. Tall ones, tiny ones, some old and chipped, others perfectly pristine. Every single one staring blankly out at the room. She loved them. She talked to them. I used to tease her about it, calling them creepy, but she always got defensive. They're not creepy. They're my friends, she'd say. Back then, it just seemed like a kid's imagination. I walked to the shelves, starting with the top row. Carefully, I picked up one doll at a time, wrapping them in tissue and placing them into the box. My fingers brushed across cold porcelain, faces, stiff limbs, tiny dresses hand-stitched in perfect detail. That's when I felt it. Something brushed against the back of my neck. It was gentle soft, like fingers barely skimming my skin. I spun around instantly. The room was still, empty, the door was shut. No one was there. But then I saw it. One of the dolls, a pale-faced one with glassy green eyes and braided hair, had shifted. I was sure of it. When I walked in, it had been facing the wall. Now it was staring directly at me, its eyes wide and unblinking. A chill ran down my spine. Maybe I bumped the shelf. Maybe it turned on its own. That's what I told myself. Get a grip, Alex, I muttered, shaking my head. I turned back to the shelf and kept packing. But the feeling didn't leave. That nagging, crawling sensation across my back as if something was watching me. I reached for another doll. As my fingers touched its dress, a soft creak echoed behind. Me, not from the shelves, from the floor. I froze. Very slowly, I turned my head. The green-eyed doll had fallen. It was lying on its side now. I hadn't touched that shelf. I was sure of it. Swallowing hard, I bent down, picked it up. It's porcelain. Face felt even colder now, almost clammy. I set it back in place, but the moment I did, a shudder ran through me. I was starting to feel like this room didn't want me here. Just a stupid old doll, I whispered. But my voice didn't sound like my own. It was thin, weak. I was halfway to the door when I heard it. A giggle, faint, high-pitched, familiar. Lily's. I turned sharply. The sound hadn't come from the room. It was outside. From the hallway. My breath hitched. My parents were supposed to be downstairs. I would have heard footsteps if someone came up. I crossed to the door and placed my hand on the knob. For a moment, I hesitated, listening. The hallway was dead silent. Then another giggle, drifting further away. I opened the door slowly. Nothing. Just the hallway, long and empty. Shadows stretched across the floor like reaching arms. I stepped into the hall, glancing back one last time. The dolls were still sitting there, but I'd swear. Their heads were tilted now, their faces angled toward the door. I pulled it shut behind me, swallowing against the lump in my throat. Halfway down the hallway, I heard it again. Rustle, like tiny feet against wood. I didn't look back. I didn't want to know. I just ran. Down the stairs, into the silence, calling out, Mom, Dad? No answer. Only that cold, sinking realization. This wasn't just a room full of old toys anymore. Something else was here, and I had woken it up. I nearly tripped at the bottom of the stairs, calling out louder this time. Mom? Dad? Are you guys here? My voice cracked. It bounced off the hallway walls and fell flat, unanswered. I stood in the foyer, surrounded by the silence of a house that no longer felt like home. The air was cold, too cold. And still, there was no sound of footsteps or drawers opening or the distant rustle of cardboard boxes being packed. It was like the whole house had gone still, like it was waiting. I walked toward the kitchen, expecting to see my parents maybe sorting things at the dining table, but the room was empty. The lights were off. The air felt heavier here, like something was wrong, but just out of reach. I glanced into the living room. A faint orange glow from a standing lamp was the only light, casting long shadows across the floor and couch. Then I saw it, sitting on the coffee table, one of Lily's dolls. My blood ran cold. It was the green-eyed one, the same doll that had moved on the shelf upstairs. The one that had fallen, stared, shifted. I knew for a fact I'd packed it into one of the boxes. I'd wrapped it carefully in tissue and closed the lid myself. There's no way it could be here. But there it was, upright and waiting. It's tiny. Porcelain hands resting gently on its lap. Its head tilted slightly to the left. Its smile, it hadn't been smiling before. Now, the corners of its painted lips were curled into a grin that was just wide enough to be wrong. I took a step back. My heel hit the edge of the rug, nearly throwing me off balance. I looked toward the staircase, trying to remember if I'd accidentally carried it down without thinking. Maybe I'd dropped it. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. Maybe crash. A thunderous noise exploded from upstairs, like a bookshelf falling or a dresser being shoved violently against the wall. I jumped so hard I dropped the box I was still holding. The contents spilled out across the floor, a tangle of bubble wrap and cloth. I didn't care. I was already sprinting back toward the stairs. Mom? Dad? Still no answer, but I could hear something. Whispers, dozens of them, all layered together like a chorus of children's voices murmuring just beyond the veil. Of hearing, I gripped the banister tight, every instinct in my body screaming not to go back up there. But I did. Step by step, each one creaking louder than the last. When I reached the top landing, I hesitated. The air felt wrong, charged. I could hear the sound more clearly now, like small feet scuffling quickly across the floorboards. The noise was coming from Lily's room. The door was closed, but I hadn't closed it. I know I hadn't. My hands trembled as I reached for the knob. It felt hot to the touch, like something had been waiting behind it. I hesitated, pressing. My ear to the wood. The whispering had stopped. I counted to 3. Then I opened the door. My stomach dropped. Every doll that had been on the shelves, dozens, maybe over 100, was now on the floor, arranged in a perfect circle. Their small bodies sat upright, facing inward, surrounding something at the center, like they were in the middle of some ancient ritual, and in the middle of them was the same green-eyed doll, the one I had just seen downstairs. It shouldn't have been here. It couldn't have been here, but there it was. Its expression had changed again. The grin was wider. Now, and the tilt of its head was almost mocking, like it was challenging me to question reality. I stood frozen at the doorway, my breath catching in my throat. I wanted to run. My instincts screamed to slam the door shut and never come back, but I stepped inside instead. Something about the scene pulled at me, demanded I understand what I was seeing. As I crossed the room, the temperature dropped sharply. My breath puffed visibly in front of me. The whispering didn't return, but the silence now had its own weight, thick and oppressive. The circle of dolls stared at me with their lifeless glass eyes, yet I could feel the malice radiating off them. And the green-eyed doll's gaze? It followed me. I kneeled slowly, cautiously, examining the ring of dolls. That's when I noticed something that hadn't been there before. Clutched tightly in the porcelain hands of one of the smaller dolls was a folded piece of paper. My fingers trembled as I pried it free. The paper was wrinkled and faded, as if it had been there for years, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was Lily's. I unfolded it and read this single sentence written in crayon. I'm not alone. They're here with me. They're always watching. A chill slid through me like a knife. My hand dropped the note and my eyes instinctively darted around the room. The dolls were all still, but now they seemed closer. I hadn't seen them move, but I was sure the circle had tightened. I stood quickly and took a step backward toward the door. That's when the door slammed shut with a violent bang, shaking the walls. I ran to it, yanking on the knob. It wouldn't budge. The lights flickered above me once, twice, then went out completely. Total darkness, and then the whispering returned, louder, closer. It was everywhere behind me, in front of me, inside my ears. And beneath it all, one voice rose above the rest. A soft, childlike voice that I recognized immediately. Lily, you're not supposed to be in here, Alex. You're not supposed to be in here, Alex. The voice echoed through the darkness, not from a single place, but from everywhere. It was unmistakably Lily's, but it was wrong, Drew. Too clear. Too smooth, like a memory that had been polished into something sinister. My breath came in short, ragged bursts. I slammed my shoulder against the door again, but it refused to move. The whispering hadn't stopped, it had multiplied, a chorus of childlike murmurs. Weaving between the pitch-black air like a lullaby sung underwater, I fumbled in my pocket for my phone. Hand shaking, I managed to turn on the flashlight. The beam pierced the darkness in a narrow cone, revealing the circle was closer, much closer. The dolls had moved. Not all of them, but enough. Where there had once been at least a few feet between me and the edge of the circle, now only inches remained. Their little faces stared up at me, some smiling serenely, others frozen in expressions that looked wrong. Faces warped by time, their features too human, too knowing. And in the center sat the green-eyed doll. That same sick smile on its porcelain lips, still watching me. I took a careful step backward, the floor creaking under my weight. My flashlight flickered for a moment, and every nerve in my body screamed, "Don't go out. Not now. Not now." The beam steadied, but the dolls were now standing. They hadn't been before. I was sure of it. Tiny porcelain limbs, once folded, now hung stiff at their sides, some with hands curled into small, delicate fists. I scanned the room, spinning in place. More dolls than I remembered. Had they come from the closet, the dresser, the shelves? They were closing in. I backed toward the desk, grabbing the first object I could find, a metal lamp, old and rusted. It felt heavy. Solid, my only weapon. "Lily," I said aloud, my voice trembling, "if this is some twisted part of you left behind, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened to you, but the green-eyed doll twitched. A jerky movement like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Then the others began to creep. Not walk creep. Shuffling, clicking, dragging. Porcelain. Tapping lightly against wood. Soft cloth limbs sliding across the floor. A scratching rhythm, like beetles crawling across dry leaves. I turned and ran to the dresser, desperate for something, anything to break the door open with. But when I reached it, I froze. A photo frame sat on top. It was one of Lily and me taken years ago. We were sitting together on her bed, her favorite doll in her lap, the green-eyed one, only now. The photo had changed. My face was scratched out. 3 deep gouges ripped through it as if by tiny, sharp fingers. Lily's face, however, remained untouched, smiling brightly. Eyes locked on something just off camera. I staggered back, dropping the frame. It shattered on the floor, and that's when the whispers stopped, all at once. Silence crashed into the room like a wave, heavy and suffocating. Then, Clink. A tiny sound right beside me. I slowly turned the flashlight toward it. One of the dolls was only inches from my foot, an old Victorian-looking figure with faded lace and a cracked jaw. It was holding something, a slip of paper. My breath caught in my throat as I took it. More of Lily's handwriting. You have to finish the game, Alex, or they won't stop. Finish the game? What game? I dropped the paper, heart thundering, and stepped back into the center of the room. The green-eyed doll was gone. My flashlight beam whipped across the room in a panic. Nothing. Empty air. Dozens of dolls now facing me, their heads slowly rotating to track my movements. Where is it? I whispered. Where the hell is it? The closet door creaked open. I didn't touch it. A low, raspy giggle, high-pitched and unnatural, came from inside. I raised the lamp like a weapon and crossed the room, each step filled with dread. The dolls parted around me as I approached the closet, their faces still and wide-eyed. I reached the door and flung it open. Empty. Just old coats, a few of Lily's dresses, and a row of boxes, some labeled, some not. Then the box on the top shelf tipped. Something fell. It hit the floor at my feet with a dull thud. The green-eyed doll. But something was wrong with it now. Its face was cracked down the center, the smile even more distorted. And its eyes, those gleaming glass eyes, were no longer reflecting my light. They were absorbing it, drawing it in like two bottomless pits. The doll twitched. Then it moved. Not suddenly. Not slowly. It crawled toward me, arms jerking forward, like a spider dragging itself on broken limbs. I screamed and swung the lamp. It connected. Porcelain shattered. The doll exploded into shards across the floor. But just as the pieces hit the ground, every other doll in the room tilted their heads in unison. Then they started moving. A tidal wave of porcelain and cloth, dozens of them coming at me all at once, faces cracked, hands reaching, voices whispering again in some unknown language. I ran, slammed into the door, pounding it until the wood groaned. It burst open on the third hit, and I stumbled into the hallway, slamming it shut behind me and pressing my back against it. My heart raced, ears ringing, but the whispers had stopped. Only silence now. I slid down to the floor, staring at the opposite wall, trying to breathe. That's when I noticed the hallway mirror again. In the reflection, Lily was standing at the end of the hall, smiling, and the green-eyed doll was back in her arms. She was standing at the end of the hallway. Lily, not a memory, not a photo. Lily, but older than I remembered. Taller, maybe. Her skin looked too pale, her limbs a little too still, like she was frozen mid-step. She held the green-eyed doll in her arms, like it was a newborn, cradled close to her chest. And her eyes, God, her eyes, they weren't Lily's eyes. They were glassy, doll-like, unblinking. I scrambled to my feet, nearly tripping as I backed against the wall. The reflection in the mirror didn't move. It just stayed there, like a photograph of something impossible, something the living world wasn't supposed to see. I turned my head toward the hallway behind me. Nothing. Empty. Space, no Lily, no doll. But when I looked back at the mirror, she was still there, standing, watching. Then in the mirror, her lips moved. But I didn't hear a sound, just one word shaped silently by her mouth. Why? I bolted down the stairs, my socks slipping against the wood. I didn't stop to check the rooms. I didn't call for my parents again. I already knew there wouldn't be an answer. Not anymore. The front door was just a few feet away. Almost there, but just before I could reach it, I stopped cold. On the hallway table, propped up as if waiting for me, was another doll. A new one. I recognized its dress red with a silver brooch. It had belonged to a larger doll Lily had gotten at a flea market the summer before she died. But the face was wrong. Because it was mine, porcelain, painted, but unmistakably me. It had my jawline, my eyebrows, even the small scar under my right eye from when I fell off my bike as a kid. I stared at it, frozen with cold horror that felt deeper than anything I had known before. and clutched in its tiny ceramic fingers was another note. Shaking, I pulled it free. You left me alone, Alex. Why didn't you come sooner? My stomach dropped. These weren't just haunted dolls. This wasn't just some cursed toy collection. This was her. Pieces of her scattered, waiting, angry. And now they wanted pieces of me. The lights above me flickered again. And for a split second, the reflection in the hallway mirror showed dozens of dolls behind me, crawling on the ceiling and walls like insects. I didn't look back. I ran into the kitchen, slammed the door shut, locked it. It wouldn't hold them for long. I knew that, but I needed time. Space. Something to think. I crouched by the pantry, trying to catch my breath, and that's when I saw the crawl space. A narrow hatch in the wall I'd never noticed before, half covered by an old shelving unit. One of the hinges looked rusted shut, but the other was cracked open just slightly, almost like someone had used it recently. I shoved the shelf aside, heart pounding in my ears, and pulled the hatch open. Darkness stared back at me, but something was down there. Something humming. A low, eerie lullaby. Almost mechanical, like a music box struggling to finish a tune. I didn't want to go in. But I knew the house would never let me leave unless I understood. With a deep breath, I grabbed a flashlight from the drawer and slid inside, pulling. The hatch shut behind me. The tunnel was tighter than I expected, barely wide enough for me to crawl. Cobwebs brushed my face, and the air smelled of dust and mildew and something else. Rot. I moved forward, knees scraping against the floorboards, flashlight beam jittering with every movement. After a few feet, the crawl space widened into a small, hidden room, and that's when I saw it. Dozens of dolls, more than I'd seen upstairs, sitting in neat rows like children waiting for story time. But these were different. Their faces were unfinished, blank. Some had hair but no eyes. Others had lips but no noses. They were incomplete, and hanging on the back wall were sketches. Drawings, crude at first, like a child's attempts to recreate someone's face. My face, my parents' faces. Even Lily's. One of them was dated nearly a year before she died. Another was labeled Next. In the far corner, there was a small writing desk covered in notes, blueprints, cuttings from magazines about dolls, restoration, taxidermy, and something called soul vessels. Pages torn from occult books, a photo of Lily, candles burned down to wax puddles. And in the center of it all, a doll body, headless, waiting. The lullaby music creaked from a broken music box nearby, turning slower and slower until it finally died in silence. I reached for one of the notes on the desk. Lily's handwriting again. If you build them just right, they can hold on forever, even if the body's gone. I stumbled back, knocking over a chair, and as I did, the dolls in the room all turned. Their heads at once, not slowly, snapped. Glass eyes gleamed in the dark. And from somewhere behind the wall, I heard the voice again. You weren't supposed to leave me, Alex, but it's okay. You can stay now. I'd backed into the wall, hands trembling, lungs burning like I'd swallowed ice. The dolls in the crawl space didn't move again, not physically, but their eyes followed me, every last one of them. Watching, judging, waiting. My flashlight flickered. I shook it hard. The beam came back just long enough to catch something on the floor behind the desk. A trunk. It was old. Leather straps. Brass corners, stained and scratched with age. A foul smell leaked from the edges, sweet and sour, the kind of rot you don't forget once you've smelled it. I didn't want to know what was inside, but I had to know. Hands shaking, I unlatched the buckles and lifted the lid. Inside was Lily's old school uniform, folded neatly. On top of it, her favorite storybook, The Lonely Girl and the Toy Maker, a cracked plastic tiara, a lock of dark brown hair tied with a ribbon, and beneath it all, a doll. But this one was different from the others, lifelike, too lifelike. Its skin wasn't porcelain. It was soft, pale, stretched too tightly. It looked like a person shrunk down to the size of a child's toy. its tiny limbs twisted at wrong angles, its mouth sewn shut with thread that disappeared into its lips. And the worst part, its face was Lily's, or at least used to be. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat, trying not to scream. But the moment my foot hit the floor, a mechanical click echoed from the wall behind me. A section of the wooden planks creaked, then shifted. A hidden panel slid open. Inside the wall was a narrow passage, barely lit by flickering candlelight, and a staircase leading down, somewhere beneath the house. My heart pounded in my chest like it was trying to warn me, don't go down there. But I knew I had to. Because this wasn't just about Lily's room or the dolls or the notes. Something bigger had been hiding beneath our home. I stepped into the passage, ducking low, and descended the stairs. The air changed almost immediately thicker, damp, earthy. The stairs creaked with each step, and the deeper I went, the more the sound of whispering returned. This time, louder, more distinct. Children's voices. Lily's voice. Don't break them, Alex. They feel everything you do. Everything you fear. At the bottom, I entered what could only be described as a workshop. And it was horrifying. The room stretched wider than it should have, like it had been carved secretly beneath the foundation. Shelves lined the walls crammed with dolls in various stages of construction. Heads without eyes, torsos missing limbs, rows of teeth in tiny glass jars, scalpels, needles, thread, old surgical tools, and pinned to the far wall photos, pages torn from our family albums. Candid shots of me sleeping, brushing my teeth, sitting at the dinner table, all dated, all recent. This wasn't just Lily's doing. Someone else had been continuing her obsession long after she died. Footsteps behind me. I turned lamp raised. No one. But on the workbench in front of me was a nearly completed doll. Its body was perfect, size accurate. Dressed in jeans and a hoodie, my hoodie. The skin looked like silicone, but when I touched it, it felt real, warm, even, and the head was missing. Beside it, a note, handwritten, older handwriting. Not Lily's. The soul only clings if the shape is familiar. Pain anchors it. Completion seals it. Underneath that, finish the twin. The others are waiting. I stumbled back, heart racing. The dolls had been blueprints, vessels, and now they wanted me to become one of them. To replace me, the whispering grew louder, rising into a dissonant chant. I grabbed the lamp again, swinging it wildly just to feel the weight in my hands. I'm not your puppet, I screamed. You hear me? I'm not yours. Then from behind me, a voice gentle, familiar. Yes, you are. I turned. Lily stood at the stairs, but not as she was before. Her skin was translucent, veined with dark cracks. Her eyes glowed faintly like tiny stars embedded in glass. And the green-eyed doll stood at her feet, its mouth now open in a too-wide grin. She stepped forward. The dolls began to move, crawling, from their shelves, dragging themselves from bins, falling off hooks and scuttling across the floor like roaches. You left me, Alex, she said again. Now you'll stay, forever. You'll never leave me again. I grabbed the nearest canister acetone, flammable, then the box of matches on the workbench. I'm sorry, Lily, I whispered. I never wanted to leave you. Her head freshened, darkened. The doll screamed an ear-splitting shriek of porcelain and rage, but I won't let you take me. I struck the match and dropped it. The moment the match touched the floor, the fire erupted like it had been waiting. Flames raced across the wooden boards, licking up the legs of the workbench, swallowing the doll body dressed in my hoodie. The acetone ignited with a violent whoosh, sending up a plume of heat and smoke that threw me backward. The screaming started again. But it wasn't just the sound of wood burning or things collapsing. It was them. The dolls. Their tiny voices shrieked like glass being dragged across steel, a cacophony of agony and rage that vibrated in my teeth. They flailed on the shelves, toppled from their perches, some writhing as if the fire hurt them, like they were more than just objects. Like they were alive, The room lit up in shades of orange and hellish red. Shadows danced along the walls, shadows shaped like children, like dolls, like Lily. She didn't run. She didn't flinch. She just stared at me through the smoke, her glowing eyes dimming. Her skin began to crack, hair curling in the heat, but she stepped forward anyway, slowly, deliberately, one foot into the fire, then another. Why did you leave me? She whispered, voice breaking as the flames reached her feet. I was alone, Alex. I didn't know how to help you. I screamed over the roar of the blaze. You shut us out. You were already gone before. You died. Her face twisted not in anger, but in something deeper. Pain, heartbreak. Her body began to blacken. The skin crumbled like burned paper, revealing glimpses of porcelain beneath it, fractured and glowing. The green-eyed doll at her feet let out one last sharp, inhuman screech, and then burst into flames, shattering into 1,000 pieces on the floor. Lily reached out toward me, and then she disappeared into the fire, her body breaking apart into ash and ember, scattered among the burning dolls that wailed as they were consumed. I turned and ran stumbling up the stairs, blinded by tears and smoke. My lungs screamed with every breath. The air grew hotter with each step, the fire chasing me like something sentient, something that refused to let me go. The crawlspace door was still open. I threw myself through it just as the fire roared up behind me, through the kitchen, down the hall, to the front door. I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed the handle and ripped it open, feeling the cool night. Air slammed into me like a blessing from another world. I ran barefoot across the lawn, the grass slick beneath my feet. When I reached the street, I turned back. The house was glowing from within. Orange light bled from the windows like molten lava. Flames clawed at the curtains and roof. I stood there, panting, watching as everything, Lily's room, the crawl space, the dolls, the workshop, was swallowed by fire. Sirens in the distance? Neighbors shouting. But I didn't move. Not until the house groaned and collapsed in on itself, a final exhale of smoke rising into the stars. And somewhere in that thick black sky, I thought I heard one last giggle, soft, childlike, but fading. Then it was gone. The fire marshal called it an electrical accident. Said faulty wiring in the walls, likely sparked in the crawl space. No one questioned me. No one asked about the dolls. My parents returned to find only ruins. They didn't know about the hidden room beneath the house. I never told them. I couldn't. I stayed at a motel that night, unable to sleep, replaying. It all in my mind. The dolls. The notes. The workshop. Lily. And in the quiet of the morning, something made me look in my duffel bag just to be sure. My stomach dropped, nestled between my clothes. It was a porcelain hand. Small, cracked, burned, but unmistakable. It was from her. I threw it into the motel dumpster, wrapped in 3 layers of towels, but I knew the truth. Some part of her was. Still out there. It's been 6 months now. I moved across the country. Changed my number. Got a new job. New apartment. I'm trying to forget. Most days I convince myself it's over. But sometimes, just sometimes, I hear that giggle again, late at night, when the lights are off, and the shadows feel too long. Last week, I woke to find my bedroom door ajar. I know I locked it. And on my desk, right beside my laptop, was a single slip of paper, crayon, written in that same familiar scrawl. You're not alone anymore. I've lived in this apartment for 2 years and nothing weird ever happened, at least not until last week. It started small. Harmless, even. I was lying in bed, halfway between sleep and consciousness, when I heard it. A sound I'd never heard in this apartment before. Tap, tap. It was soft, delicate, almost polite. Like a knuckle gently knocking on glass. My first thought was, it's the wind. Or maybe something shifting outside, an old pipe settling, or a bird flying into the window. That sort of thing. This building's ancient. There's always some groaning or creaking somewhere. I rolled over and tried to ignore it. Tap, 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 3 knocks. Rhythmic, unmistakable. This time I sat up, frowning into the dark. I live on the 10th floor of a high-rise. There's no balcony, no ledge outside my window. Just a sheer drop straight down to the concrete below. And there's no adjacent building close enough for someone to jump across from. Still, I got out of bed and approached the window, my bare feet brushing the cold wooden floor. The curtains swayed slightly, though there was no draft. I reached out and slowly pulled them aside. Nothing, just my own reflection in the glass, lit faintly by the orange glow of the street lamps far below. Beyond that, only darkness. An endless void stretching over the city skyline. I stood there for a moment, watching my reflection watching me, half expecting a face to suddenly appear behind the glass. But there was nothing. My heart was still hammering like I'd just run a mile. I let the curtain fall back and whispered to myself, "You're just tired, Ethan. Get some sleep." I climbed back into bed and pulled the covers over me. My eyes stayed fixed on the window, but the tapping didn't return. Not that night. The next day, I tried to forget about it. I chalked it up to sleep deprivation or maybe even a dream. I worked remotely, so I barely left the apartment. Spent most of my time staring at screens, eyes heavy from caffeine and stress. My body was wired, but my mind constantly drifted. By evening, I was on edge again. Every little sound set my nerves. On fire, the refrigerator humming, the elevator rumbling down the hall, even the neighbors arguing through the wall. By 11 p.m., I was back in bed, trying to will myself to sleep. My eyes were closed. My mind was floating. Silence settled across the apartment. And then just like the night before, it started again. Tap, tap, tap. 3 precise knocks on the window. No more than 5 feet from where I lay. I bolted upright this time. No hesitation. No second guessing. I threw the covers off and marched to the window, yanking the curtains open. Again, nothing. Not a damn thing out there. I leaned forward until my forehead touched the glass. My breath fogged a small patch, and I used my sleeve to wipe it clean. I scanned the glass for cracks, scratches, or even a smudge that might explain the sound. Nothing. I backed away slowly, gripping my arms to steady my breathing. That's when I realized the air in the room had turned cold. Not just chilly and natural. Like something had sucked the warmth right out of the walls. I moved from window to thermostat, checking for any open vent or leak. Everything was shut tight. The windows were locked. No air was getting in or out. The tapping didn't come again that night, but I didn't sleep. Not a wink. By the third night, I was determined to catch whatever was causing it. I set up my phone with the security camera app open and aimed it directly at the window. I turned off the lights, pulled a chair into the corner of the room, and sat there in the dark waiting. Hours passed. The city outside slowly quieted, the glow of taillights fading into stillness. I checked my phone obsessively, watching the feed. Nothing. 12:30 a.m., 1:15 a.m., 2:47 a.m., and then at exactly 3 a.m. Tap, tap. I jumped so hard I nearly knocked the phone from my lap. My eyes snapped to the window, wide and unblinking. My breath caught in my throat, and then I saw it. A handprint, pressed against the outside of the window. It was faint, so faint it could have been a trick of the light. But no, it was there. 5 fingers splayed against the glass. The smudge of a palm, distorted by condensation. I staggered backward, knocking into my dresser. The phone slipped from my lap and clattered to the ground. I didn't even reach for it. Because in that moment, all I could do was stare. The handprint began to fade. Not like a smudge wiped away, but slowly, as if the window itself was absorbing it. I backed into the hallway, heart racing, unable to tear my eyes away from the glass. How the hell could a handprint be on the outside of a window 15 floors up? I didn't sleep at all that night. Just paced the apartment until dawn. That was the first time I realized something was seriously wrong. Something was out there, watching me, waiting, and it wasn't going away. I didn't go to work the next day. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that handprint on the glass. I kept hearing that precise rhythm in my head, tap, tap, like it had embedded itself in my skull. I tried to distract myself, cleaned the entire apartment twice, rearranged the furniture, ate cold leftovers straight from the fridge. But no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Around noon, I went out onto the balcony of the apartment, down the hall, the one that faced the same direction as my window. I leaned over the edge, trying to see the outside of my own unit. There was nothing. No ledges. No footholds. Nothing that could explain how someone or something could reach that high. I even asked the front desk guy, Raymond, if any maintenance workers had been using ropes or scaffolding near my window lately. He looked at me like I was crazy and shook his head. Nah, man, nothing like that. And we don't clean the windows on individual request. Those only get serviced every few months. But has anyone else reported anything weird? I pressed. He hesitated. Like what? I didn't want to sound insane, so I shrugged. Strange noises? At night? Knocking? He smirked, relieved. This is the city, dude. You'll hear weird crap all the time. Don't let it mess with you. Yeah. Easy for him to say that night I couldn't eat. Couldn't sit still. I left the lights on in every room and watched the clock tick past midnight, heart climbing higher with every minute. The city outside was a wash of blurred lights and distant sirens. But inside my apartment, everything felt too quiet, like it was waiting. I kept the curtains drawn and set up my phone again, angling the camera at the bedroom window, same as the night before. I told myself I wouldn't look until morning. At 2:30 a.m., I was still wide awake, pacing, checking the time every 15 seconds. At 2:59 a.m., I froze in the doorway to the bedroom, staring at the curtain. I swear, I could feel something on the other side. And then, right on Q-tap. Tap, tap. It was louder this time. Sharper, like bone hitting glass. I backed away slowly, eyes locked on the window. My phone, still recording, buzzed in my hand. A new notification from the security app. Motion detected. I tapped the screen. The video feed stuttered, static washing over it for a split second, before it resolved into a clear image. There was a figure outside my window. Not just a handprint, not a shadow. A full silhouette blurred and flickering like it wasn't entirely real. It hovered just beyond the glass, featureless except for the suggestion of a head, and 2 glowing pinpricks where I should be. I dropped the phone. It hit the carpet with a dull thud, and I stood there, paralyzed. The tapping started again. Tap, tap. But this time, the rhythm changed. It was slower, deliberate. A message, maybe. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, 3. Like it was trying to tell me something. I edged closer, barely breathing. My hand reached out almost involuntarily and grabbed the curtain. Part of me wanted to see it, needed to. But before I could pull it back, the tapping stopped. I held my breath, waited. Silence. Then I heard something even worse. A soft, scraping sound, like nails being dragged across the outside wall starting at the window and moving sideways. Toward the living room, I followed the sound, trembling. Every step felt like wading through molasses. I reached the other side of the apartment just in time to see a new handprint smudge itself onto the living room glass. Another knock followed. Just one. A single heavy thud, like something hitting the glass with its entire weight. I backed away and sank to the floor, clutching my knees to my chest. The room felt darker now, like the light itself had dimmed. I couldn't stop shaking. The air buzzed around me, thick with electricity and dread. And then the whispers started. It began as a low hum, almost inaudible. But the longer I listened, the clearer it became. A voice, raspy, wrong, calling my name. Ethan, let me in. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The voice was inside, not just in the room, but in my head. Ethan, open the window. Over and over, like a mantra, it looped. The words blending together into a sick melody. I curled up tighter, eyes shut, whispered to myself, "It's not real. It's not real." But the whisper responded, "We are real." I must have passed out at some point because I woke up on the living room floor with the sun bleeding through the blinds. The apartment was quiet again, warm, normal. But when I walked over to the window, the handprint was still there. Only this time, it was smeared downward, as if whatever was out there had been dragging its fingers down the glass. And scratched. Into the window's surface, barely noticeable, unless the light hit it just right, were 3 words. Let US in. I stared at those words for a long time. Let US in? They weren't written in marker or smudged with a finger. They were etched into the glass, as if something sharp, something precise, had carved them one stroke at a time. The letters were shallow but unmistakable, catching the morning. Light like scars on skin. I reached out, half expecting the words to wipe away like condensation. But when my fingers touched the glass, I felt the grooves. Real, tangible, permanent. I backed away from the window and sat on the edge of the couch, trying to make sense of it. Nothing did. I hadn't opened the window. I hadn't even touched it. And even if I had some kind of mental break and somehow carved those words myself in the middle of the night, how would I have done it from the outside? That's what got me. The words weren't carved on the inside. They were etched on the outside of the glass, which meant someone or something had been out there. 15 stories in the air. No ledge, no rope, nothing. And I still had no idea why. That afternoon, I called the building manager again. Not Raymond, the head guy. Mr. Giles. I kept it vague, saying there was vandalism on my window and that someone might be climbing the exterior of the building. He showed up 20 minutes later with a clipboard and a cheap pair of sunglasses that didn't match the weather. We stood side by side in my living room, looking at the message. Looks like acid etching, he said after a moment. Real fine, too. You'd need diamond or glass cutters to do this clean. Maybe a laser if someone got fancy? From the outside? I asked. He nodded. Yeah. Otherwise he'd tearing around the grooves. You got balcony access? I shook my head. Mr. Giles squinted at me like he was waiting for a confession. Then we've got a bigger problem. If some nutcase is scaling buildings and carving words into glass, that's a liability nightmare. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the handprint smeared below the message. You have cameras? He asked. I showed him the motion-triggered clip I had saved, just static and a flicker of shadow. No figure. No proof, nothing that would hold up. He frowned and told me he'd have maintenance check the security cameras on the roof and ground floor. I nodded, knowing it wouldn't matter. Whatever this was, it didn't care about being caught. Before he left, he gave me a long look. The kind people give someone they don't quite trust anymore? You should get some rest, Mr. Klein. Lack of sleep does things to people. No kidding. That night, I didn't wait for the tapping. I tried something else. Around midnight, I dragged the recliner into the bedroom, positioned it at the far end of the room, and sat down with a blanket and a kitchen knife in my lap. I didn't know what I was planning to do with it. Stab a ghost? Cut through a hallucination? Didn't matter. It made me feel sane, even if it was pretend. I left the curtain open this time. I wanted to see it coming. For hours, nothing happened. The city buzzed below. My phone vibrated once a junk email. Somewhere far off, a dog barked and a siren screamed into the night. All normal sounds. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., the room changed. It didn't get cold, it got still, like the air had frozen, like the entire world had stopped breathing. And then, tap, tap, tap. This time it wasn't at the window, it was at the wall behind me. I shot out of the chair, spinning around so fast I nearly tripped. My back hit the closet door. Knife raised. Breath held. Tap, right behind me again, then to the left. Then to the ceiling, it was moving, circling me, in the walls, in the floorboards, like something crawling through the framework of the building, dragging its limbs across drywall and pipes and steel. And then, as suddenly as it began, the tapping stopped, and the whispers returned. Ethan? It was a whisper, but it was close, right by my ear. Too close. I spun around, knife clutched so tightly my fingers ached. Nothing. Let us in. My eyes flicked to the window. A face stared back at me, pressed against the glass from the outside. It wasn't like the blur from the video. This was clear, detailed, human, but not quite. Its skin was gray and tight, stretched too thin over its skull like it had been left in the sun too long. The mouth was wide and dry, cracked lips peeling back over crooked teeth. Its eyes were the worst, part milky white, sunken deep, and completely empty. The thing just hovered there, suspended in the air, face glued to the window like a leech to flesh. Then, slowly, it opened its mouth. Cap. One long fingernail scratched the glass. Cap. The grin widened. Cap. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the knife. Then the thing did something that made my stomach twist. It raised its hand and waved. At me, like it knew me, like we were friends. I ran from the room, slammed the bedroom door shut, and collapsed against it, heart threatening to rupture. I didn't know what it wanted. I didn't care. All I knew was that it had found me, and it wasn't going away. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the hallway floor, my back against the front door, the knife clutched in both hands. I didn't move. I didn't sleep. Every so often, I'd hear it, the soft scrape of something gliding across the window, or the faintest whisper of my name echoing through the vents. Ethan. Always in that low, rasping voice. Sometimes. Right behind me, sometimes inside my own thoughts. When the sun rose, it didn't bring comfort. The apartment still felt wrong, like it had been touched by something that didn't belong in this world. The air had a weight to it, a dampness that clung to my skin no matter how many windows I opened. I didn't go to work. I didn't answer my phone. I couldn't. Something had changed, and I needed answers. That afternoon, I visited the building archives. The management office didn't ask questions when I said I was researching the history of the tower. Weird hobby. The front desk lady muttered as she handed me the access key to the storage basement. It wasn't much. Old blueprints, leasing records, structural diagrams. But buried in a dusty, water-stained folder, I found something strange. A report dated 1999, 26 years ago. Incident. Unauthorized exterior climbing reported. Witness. Tenant on 14th floor. Description. A pale figure was seen crawling up the side of the building around 3 a.m. Thought it was a hallucination. Until it waved at me. Result. No suspect found. Window on 10th floor damaged. Tenant moved out within the week. Got my breath caught. 15th floor. My floor. I flipped the page. There was a photo attached, grainy, black and white, taken with an old analog camera. The image showed a window with a handprint and something darker. A shadow just beyond the glass. Its face was distorted, but the outline. It was the same as the thing that had stared into my room. It had happened before. That night, I almost checked into a hotel. But something about leaving made it worse. Like whatever was haunting me would follow crawl through the electrical wires, slip inside the walls of wherever I went next. No one else could see it. No one else would believe me. So I stayed. I locked every door. I shoved a dresser in front of the bedroom window. I disconnected every camera. No more security apps. No more recordings. I didn't want to see it anymore. At 3 a.m., the tapping returned. Tap. Tap. But this time, it wasn't from the window. It was from the bathroom mirror. I froze, knife in hand. The air was still thick, like it had been vacuum-sealed. Tap, tap, tap. I crept toward the sound, heart pounding in my chest. The door was slightly ajar. The light was off. Everything was silent except those rhythmic taps, like fingernails on glass. With trembling fingers, I reached for the switch. Light flooded the room, and I nearly screamed. My reflection was gone. No Ethan staring back. Just the bathroom empty and pale in the mirror, like I wasn't even standing there. And then slowly, like something rising from black water, a face appeared in the glass. Not mine. Its skin was sagging and bruised, eyes glowing faintly like dying coals. It looked like it had been submerged for decades, swollen, cold, hollow. Its mouth moved. No sound. just the motion. But I knew what it said. Let us in. I stumbled backward, knocking over a towel rack. The lights flickered once, twice, and then died. The entire apartment plunged into darkness. The whispers returned, louder than ever, filling every corner of the room. Ethan dot dot dot, Ethan dot dot, at dot dot dot. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't grab my keys. I just sprinted down the hall to the front door and yanked at the knob. Locked. Deadbolt. Jammed. The air grew colder. Tap, tap, tap. Now it was at every window. Living room. Kitchen. Bedroom. Tap, tap, tap. I spun around and saw movement, dozens of handprints blooming across the glass like bruises. Smears of moisture, long streaks of condensation, they were surrounding me. The voices overlapped, no longer whispers, but a single distorted chant. Let us in. In a panic, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The line connected, but no one answered. Just static, and then my voice. The call echoed my own breathing, my own panic. It was replaying a recording of me. My voice croaked from the phone speaker. I think someone's outside my window. Tap. I live on the 10th floor. There's no way anyone could. Tap, tap. I need help, please. I need help. Tap, tap, tap. The call ended. That was when the light returned, not from the ceiling fixtures, but from the window. A glow, soft and bluish, emanating from outside. I crept toward it. The handprints were gone. The glass was clean again, like nothing had ever touched it. And beyond the window, suspended in midair, were 3 figures. Not fully formed, shifting. Blurred, but they all had the same hollow eyes. And they were smiling, not in malice, not in joy, but in recognition. They knew me. They'd always known me. And now they were waiting. They didn't move. The 3 figures hovered outside the window, weightless and patient, their hollow eyes locked on mine through the glass. I stood frozen in the middle of my living room, staring back, the cold from outside somehow leaking through the sealed window pane and sinking deep into my bones. They are still smiling, but not like people smile. It was all wrong, like someone had studied how a mouth worked and twisted it into something obscene. Their grins stretched too far, splitting their skin at the corners like paper tearing. No joy, no warmth. Just the kind of smile you might find on a corpse if someone had forced it into a mask of happiness. One of them slowly raised a hand and pressed it against the window. I backed away, stumbling over the couch, heart hammering against my ribs. And then they vanished, gone in an instant, as if they had never been there at all. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't dare. Instead, I sat in the hallway again, all the lights on. Every reflective surface in the apartment covered mirrors, black screens, even the microwave door. I draped them with towels and sheets, anything I could find, because I realized something. That night, they come through the reflections. That's why my reflection had vanished. That's why the bathroom mirror had shown that face instead of mine. And now they weren't just scratching at my windows. They were inside, behind the glass, behind the mirrors, watching, waiting. The next day, I called my sister. I hadn't talked to her in months, not since we fought over Dad's will. But I needed a voice, a real voice, to anchor me to something human, something normal. Ethan, she said after the 3rd ring. Jesus, you sound awful. You okay? I need you to tell me something, I said, ignoring her concern. Do you believe in ghosts? A pause. What? Something else, not ghosts. Maybe something worse. Something that watches you, follows you, even through your own reflection. Ethan. Her voice softened. Are you using again? I felt a spike of frustration. No, damn it. I'm not hallucinating. I know how this sounds. But I need you to believe me. Another pause. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. Did you see them too? I sat there stunned. What? The reflections, the tapping, the whispers. I thought I was losing it. She said, voice trembling now. When I lived in that old condo 3 years ago, it started there. Same time every night. 3 a.m., a face in the window, Even though I was on the 12th floor, I swallowed hard. What did you do? I moved, she whispered. I broke the lease and ran, never looked back. Did it stop? No. The line went silent. No, I repeated. They followed me, she said, almost in tears now. I don't see them anymore. Not directly. But I feel them in mirrors. When I walk past glass, even when I close my eyes sometimes, I hear them tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Right then, as if cued by her words, I heard it again, this time from inside the apartment. From behind the covered television screen. I dropped the phone. The sheet I had taped over the TV was moving just slightly, like something was pressing against it from the inside. A ripple, a slow bulge in the fabric. I crept forward, every nerve in my body screaming to run. The tapping started again, light at first, then louder, more urgent. Like it knew I was coming closer. I reached out with a shaking hand and tore the sheet away, and there it was. Not a face this time. Not a shadow, but myself. Only, it wasn't me. The reflection stared back at me from the black screen. Same face, same eyes, same clothes. But it didn't move when I moved. It just watched, smiling, and then it raised its hand and pointed to the hallway behind me. I spun around, nothing. When I turned back to the screen, the reflection was gone. I ran to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, dripping. The sink so tightly my knuckles went white. I avoided the mirror. I kept my eyes down, focused on the drain, faucet, anything but the reflection above. But I could feel it. Something was watching me. Something that wasn't part of me anymore. Finally, against every ounce of instinct I had left, I looked up. The reflection was normal. My eyes, pale face, panic carved into every angle. But just as I let out a breath of relief, the reflection blinked. But it didn't. I screamed and backed away, nearly slipping on the tile. The reflection grinned, like it was pleased. Then it raised a single hand and scratched a long, deliberate word across the inside of the mirror. Soon, I locked myself in the closet that night. No windows, no glass, no mirrors, just darkness and walls and silence. Or so I thought. Around 3 a.m., the whispers came again, muffled through the walls like voices in water. Ethan dot dot dot, Ethan dot 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 dot, come see dot dot dot. And then the tapping began, not outside, not on the windows, but on the closet door. From the inside, the tapping was behind me, inside the closet. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in the pitch black, my breath held tight in my lungs, my body tense and shaking. The sound came again, tap, 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 slow, deliberate, like fingers brushing wood from within the closet wall. I wasn't alone in there. I turned slowly, every muscle stiff with dread, expecting something to grab me from the dark. But there was nothing, no movement, no glow of eyes, just pitch black and the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. Until a voice whispered, "Found." "You," I screamed. The door burst open as I scrambled out, toppling onto the hallway floor. The light from the living room lamp bathed me in yellow warmth, but it felt distant, useless against what I'd felt just inches away. I didn't go back in. I didn't stop to catch my breath. I needed out. Out of the apartment, out of the building, out of anything with a reflective surface. Outside, the morning was just breaking. Pale light filtered through the clouds as I stumbled down the sidewalk, barely able to walk in a straight line. I looked like hell, no shoes, bruised, bloodshot eyes. A couple of people glanced at me, then turned away, too uncomfortable to ask if I was okay. Good, because I wasn't. I wandered into a diner down the street. It was small, tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop, with no mirrors on the walls, just wood paneling and dusty booths. I collapsed into a seat at the back and ordered coffee I didn't plan to drink, and for a while, I felt safe. No reflections, no whispers, no tapping. Just the quiet clink of forks and low music from an old jukebox in the corner. But when I looked into the spoon on my table, warped and faint, I saw eyes staring back. Not mine. I dropped it and stood up so fast I knocked over my chair. The waitress gave me a wary look. You okay, huh? I couldn't answer. My throat was dry. My head was pounding. All I could do was grab my phone and check the camera app almost by instinct. It was already open, recording. The feed showed my apartment, my living room window. There was a figure standing there again. Only this time, it was me. Not a reflection. Not a shadow. A full version of me, identical down to the clothes I'd thrown on before fleeing. It stood at the window, back turned to the room, staring out over the city like a statue. And then it slowly turned toward the camera and smiled. The video glitched, then cut to black. I went to a motel that night, no windows that opened. No mirrors, no polished metal or black screens. I asked for the oldest room they had, something outdated, worn, analog. The clerk didn't ask questions. He barely looked at me. I covered the TV, the doorknob, even the faucet. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped together, staring at the floor like a child waiting for the storm to pass. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I didn't answer. The voicemail came 30 seconds later. I played it. The voice was mine. It whispered, "You can run, but we already have your face, Ethan." Then the tapping started again. From the mirror I had missed, the one behind the bathroom door. I turned slowly and saw him, me, standing in the mirror. But it wasn't just my reflection. It was alive. Its skin sagged. Its lips were stretched into a horrible grin. The eyes were pure black now, like twin voids sucking the light from the room. Behind him stood the others, dozens of them, each. One a warped copy of me in different poses, different ages, all smiling, all tapping. Tap, tap. I lunged forward and smashed the mirror with the motel's chair. Glass exploding across the sink in a spray of shards. My hand bled, but I didn't care. The mirror was gone. The reflection was gone. The silence returned, but only for a moment. Then my phone buzzed again. New voicemail. Same block number. This time I didn't play it. I threw the phone in the toilet and left the motel. I am not sure how long I've been running. I've driven across 3 states. I sleep in parking lots, in back seats, and storage units. I keep a blade under my pillow and avoid my own reflection at all costs. I don't own a phone anymore. I don't trust cameras. I don't trust screens. I don't even trust water when it's still. But they still find me. In gas station windows, in puddles, in car mirrors. Sometimes I see my own face smiling at me just before the glass fogs with handprints that shouldn't be there. They want in. They already have my name. And now they have my face. So if you ever hear tapping on your window at night, if you ever catch your reflection smiling when you're not, if the voice calling your name sounds just like yours, don't answer. Don't look. Because once you do, they never leave. Sleep had been eluding me for weeks, and I couldn't quite explain why. It wasn't stress, and it wasn't insomnia. It was something else, something in the air after midnight that felt unnatural. Like the darkness itself was watching me. That night, it was past 2 a.m. when I took the trash out. I had just tied off the bag and was walking down the driveway when I heard it so faint at first that I thought I imagined it. A whisper, a voice carried by the wind. Clara. I froze. My name. It wasn't just a sound. It was my name, spoken with a slow, rasping drag, like whoever said it had dirt in their lungs. I glanced around, half expecting to see a neighbor, playing a prank or a drunk wandering by, but the street was empty. Still, I heard it again, this time clearer. Clara. Come here. The voice wasn't coming from across the street or a window above me. It was rising up from below. My eyes dropped to the storm drain at the end of the driveway. The black, slatted opening seemed to stare back like an open mouth. I took a cautious step closer, heart thudding in my chest. The drain was just a few feet away, covered in a rusted metal grate. I crouched, shining my flashlight into the opening. But the beam vanished into pitch black darkness, swallowed by the grime-coated walls. Silence. Then, Clara. Come closer. I recoiled so fast I nearly dropped the flashlight. My instincts screamed to run, but my legs only moved after I caught a glimpse. Weight moving just out of reach down there. I sprinted back into the house, slamming and locking the door behind me. My back pressed against the wood as I tried to slow my breathing. Maybe it was a kid. Maybe it was a recording. Maybe I was imagining it. But then, even through the insulated walls, I could still hear the whisper. Faint, hungry, patient. Clara. Once I was sure the doors were locked, I crept to the window and parted the curtain, just enough to peek out. The storm drain was still there, quiet and still in the pale glow of the street lamp. But the air felt heavier now, like the calm before. A lightning strike. I forced myself upstairs, every step echoing through the dark house like a gunshot. I double-checked every window and door, even though I knew nothing human could have reached my window on the second floor. By the time I reached my bedroom, I was shaking. I shut the door, locked it, turned on every light I could, and climbed. Into bed fully dressed. The whisper hadn't come again, but I could still feel it, like a breath brushing the nape of my neck. I pressed my pillow over my ears and tried to sleep, but then I heard it again, faint, whispered, right behind. The wall. Clara, let me in. I sat upright, heart hammering against my ribs. I reached for my phone and opened the voice recorder, setting it on the nightstand just in case I wasn't going crazy. I didn't expect it to capture anything, but after a few minutes, I played it back. It started with silence, then static, then, Clara, come closer. My blood ran cold. I turned off the recorder and dropped the phone. It hadn't just been in my head. I wasn't crazy. Something was whispering my name, and it was getting bolder. By morning, the whisper was gone. The daylight made everything feel safer, more logical. Like maybe I'd had a nightmare and convinced myself it was real. But that recording still sat on my phone like a curse I was too afraid to replay. I told myself I'd imagined it. That was the only way I could convince myself to step outside again. I needed answers or maybe just to prove I hadn't completely lost my mind. The storm drain was still at the end of the driveway, crusted with rust and gunk, its slatted cover glistening with dew. I walked over slowly, clutching my flashlight in one hand and the crowbar in the other. Why the crowbar? I didn't know. Instinct, maybe. Clara. I froze. The voice was softer in daylight, muted, but it was there. I leaned closer, shining my light between the slats. At first, all I saw was the damp curve of the tunnel wall, slick with mildew. Then I saw something shift. Two faint, glowing orbs' eyes blinking slowly just beyond the reach of the beam. I gasped and staggered backward, nearly falling. The eyes didn't move. They just watched. Don't leave me, Clara. I slammed the crowbar into the grate, trying to jam it closed even though it hadn't been open. My hands were shaking, adrenaline surging. I managed to wedge the metal deeper between the slats and ran back inside, not looking back. Whatever. Was down there saw me, and now it knew I was listening. I called the city's sewer department. Told them I thought an animal had crawled down there. Maybe even a kid. They promised to send someone out by the end of the week. I didn't mention the voice. What was I going to say? Hey, there's something whispering my name from the storm drain. I didn't want to be locked up in a psych ward. Still, I couldn't ignore it. I needed to know if this thing, whatever it was real. That afternoon, I went next door to Mrs. Whitaker's house. She'd lived on our street for decades and knew everything about everyone. If there were urban legends about the drain, she'd know. Her face paled the moment I mentioned it. You heard it? She whispered, eyes wide with alarm. The drain by your driveway? Yes, I said. And something looked back. She stepped back as if my words were toxic. That drain's been bad news for years. People used to hear things, voices, whispers. Then a boy went missing. That was maybe 10 years ago. Just vanished. His parents swore they heard him calling from the drain for days afterward. I felt like I'd swallowed a bucket of ice water. What happened to them? I asked. Mrs. Whittaker shook her head. They moved. Couldn't stand the house anymore. Said they'd wake up to him calling from inside the vents. My skin crawled. She leaned closer. They say once you hear the whisper, it never really leaves you. It follows you like it's marked you. I thanked her, barely holding back a tremble, and walked home. Every shadow now felt like it had weight. Every breeze sounded like my name. And the moment I stepped back into my house, the whisper started again. Clara, Clara. Come closer? I rushed to the living room window, heart pounding. The street was empty. The drain was still sealed shut. But the voice wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was inside. I pressed my ear against the nearest wall. Nothing. And I heard it. Again, faint, slithering through the air vent. Clara, it's so cold. Let me in. I stumbled back, fumbling with my phone. I opened the recording app again, hit record, and held it toward the vent. I only recorded for a few seconds before stopping and playing it back. The voice was loud this time, as if it were only inches from the microphone. Clara, I see you. I threw the phone onto the couch, my hands trembling uncontrollably. The whispers were everywhere now through the vents, the walls, even the drains inside the house. I ran to the kitchen and turned on the sink. The water sputtered to life. And then came the whisper, bubbling up from the pipes. Don't leave. Me. Stay? I grabbed a towel and jammed it into the drain. I didn't care if it made sense anymore. Something was coming through. Something that knew me. And it wasn't going to stop. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it, a chorus now. Not just one voice, many. All whispering variations of my name. Some high-pitched and childlike, others cracked and ancient, like dead lungs, gasping. For sound, they echoed from the vents, seeped out of the drains, vibrated beneath the floorboards. No matter where I went in the house, I couldn't escape them. My home had turned into an echo chamber of dread. I tried to drown it out with music, but even that didn't help. In the quiet moments between songs, I'd hear it, Clara. Open the grate. We're waiting. We're so hungry. The worst part? I started recognizing some of the voices. The one that always lingered longest raspy, slow-sounded eerily like my late brother's. The thought made my stomach twist. He'd been gone for 2 years. I had never quite healed from it. How could grief manifest like this? Could my mind be unraveling from all the things I'd never said? Or was something real tapping into the deepest part of me? By morning, the entire house smelled like damp earth and mildew. The floors near the vents were wet. Not puddles, but slick, like condensation that wouldn't dry. I wiped it down, only for the moisture to return hours later. It was as if the house was sweating or leaking from somewhere deep within. That's when I noticed the basement door. I never went down there. It was just a small, unfinished space with old tools and dusty boxes. But now, the door was cracked open. Just barely. I always kept it shut. I stepped closer, crowbar in hand, heart hammering against my ribs. A cold draft flowed from the stairwell, damp, heavy. My eyes adjusted slowly to the darkness beyond. And just as I placed my foot on the top step, I heard it again. From below this time, Clara, it was louder here, more present. Like the speaker was just at the bottom of the steps, crouched in the dark, waiting. I see you. I slammed the door shut and jammed a chair under the knob. That night, I slept in my car. When I returned the next morning, something had changed. The house was quiet. Still. Too still. For a moment, I dared to believe it. It was over. Until I found the writing. It was faint, barely visible, at first scrawled in wet streaks down the hallway wall, smeared like a child's dirty finger painting. Let US in. And below it, in even fainter red-brown letters. We're so lonely. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. My eyes darted to the floor. Footprints. Small. Bare. Leading from the bathroom drain to the hallway. And straight toward the basement door, My phone buzzed. A voicemail, unknown number. Hands trembling, I pressed play. There was static, then that familiar rasp, dragging my name out like a song. Clara. You opened it. My legs buckled. I slid to the floor, the phone clattering beside me. I hadn't opened anything, but something had. I went, to Mrs. Whitaker again? She took one look at me and ushered me inside without a word. Her kitchen smelled like tea and old paper. I didn't even have to ask the question. She just nodded and said, "You let it talk to you." "What is it?" I asked, my voice hoarse. She hesitated, staring into her cup. "When I was young," she said slowly, "people used to talk about the underneath, not just the sewers or the tunnels. Something older. Something that was always there, lurking, listening, feeding off the ones who hear it. Once it knows your name, it doesn't forget." My throat tightened. Is there a way to stop it? Her eyes met mine. "No, but you can starve it. Ignore it, deny it, don't listen, don't speak. Don't look." I left her house shaking. My nerves were frayed, my sanity hanging by a thread. The thing in the drain, it wanted me to believe it was someone I loved. It wanted me to open something. But I wasn't going to give it that. I returned home with duct tape, rags, a hammer, anything I could use to seal every vent, every drain. I stuffed them all until the air inside the house grew stale and quiet. And for a few hours, the whispers stopped. Until 3:17 a.m., tap, 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 not from the drain, from under my bed. I froze. Then I heard it again, whispered, almost gleeful. "We're already inside." The voice under the bed didn't whisper. Again. It didn't need to, because now I knew the truth. They weren't trying to get in anymore. They were in. The moment I heard that sentence, "We're already inside," a switch flipped inside me. This wasn't about curiosity anymore. It wasn't even fear, it was war. My survival instincts roared to life, and I rolled off the bed and hit the floor hard, dragging myself across the carpet and out the door, heart pounding so violently I thought it might burst. Behind me, I swore I heard the slow, deliberate sound of something shifting beneath the mattress. Like something had been laying there waiting, and now that it had spoken, it no longer had to hide. I slammed the door behind me, wedging a chair. Under the handle, I stood, panting in the hallway, drenched in sweat, staring at the door like it might fly off the hinges. I had sealed every vent, covered every drain, and yet they were still here, whispering, tapping, smiling in the dark. Something was wrong with this house. Not haunted, worse, infected, and I was the host. The smell hit me next. Rot, moisture, something wet and old. It came from the floorboards, spreading like mold through the wood. I peeled up the edge of the rug in the hallway and nearly vomited. Beneath it, the floorboards were soaked and black, warped like they were rotting from below. When I pried one up, a gush of thick, dark water spilled out, like I'd opened a wound. I dropped the crowbar and stumbled back. The water bubbled, as if something underneath was breathing. Then the whisper came again, rising from the hole in the floor. "Clara, we've missed you." This time it didn't sound desperate or pleading. It sounded happy, like they had finally gotten what they wanted. I tried to leave. Keys in hand, jacket thrown over my shoulder, I marched straight to the front door. But when I opened it, a solid wall of black. No porch, no street, no sun, just darkness. Complete, consuming, endless. And in the center of it, something moved, slow, slithering, as if it were made of smoke and mud and broken voices. It didn't crawl forward. It rose. The shape took form arms too long, a torso twisted sideways, a head that lolled like it had no bones. Its mouth opened, not wide, but tall, splitting upward toward its brow, and inside was nothing but more dark. It whispered, not a word, not a name, just a noise, a chorus of tiny wet breaths, as if hundreds of mouths inside that body were sighing at once. I screamed and slammed the door shut. When I turned, The hallway behind me was longer than it had ever been. Like the house was growing, stretching, feeding. I didn't sleep. I didn't sit. I just stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by flickering lights and the sound of water dripping from nowhere. The walls creaked, the vents groaned, and beneath the floor I could hear something dragging itself around. They weren't trying to drive me insane anymore. They were wearing me down. I thought about Mrs. Whitaker's words. Don't listen. Don't speak. Don't look. But what if it was already too late? At 3:33 a.m., I got a call. No caller ID. I knew I shouldn't answer, but I did. I held the phone to my ear, breath held, body trembling, silence. Then, Clara, we're under your skin now. And I felt it. A twitch, just under my neck. Then another, behind my eye. Like something was moving, squirming, inside me. I dropped the phone and ran to the bathroom, threw open the medicine cabinet, tore it apart. I needed something, anything sharp. My hand landed on a pair of tweezers. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger sunken. Eyes, pale skin, lips twitching. I leaned in. There, in the whites of my eye, just beneath the surface, something twitched. I screamed and staggered back, smashing the mirror with the tweezers. Glass rained down. My vision blurred. The drain gurgled. I looked down. Black water swelled inside the sink. And then a hand emerged. Pale, small, like a child's, gripping the edge of the basin. Then the voice soft as a lullaby. Come back down, Clara. We miss you. The childlike hand remained gripped on the edge of the sink, knuckles gray-blue and swollen, like it had been soaking in water for hours, maybe days. Long, cracked fingernails scraped the porcelain slowly, as if relishing the sound. I stood frozen, back pressed against the wall, clutching the broken tweezers in my hand like they could protect me from whatever nightmare I had invited into my home. The whisper came again, not from the hand this time, but from inside the sink. From inside. The drain. We were lonely down here. Clara ... So very lonely. Then a second hand emerged, and a third. All small, all drenched. All grasping and crawling blindly over each other, like rats clawing out of a pit. That's when I knew these weren't just things from the storm drain. They were children, or what was left of them. The missing boy Mrs. Whitaker told me about, the others no one ever talked about. Their bodies long gone, but their voices remained. Their souls remained, trapped in the pipes, in the vents, in the rot beneath my floorboards. I turned and bolted out of the bathroom. The lights were flickering violently now. Water leaked from the ceiling and pooled on the hardwood floor, dark, and thick and reeking of decay. In the hallway, I nearly slipped. My feet hit something slick chunks of wet leaves and worse flesh, small teeth, broken fingernails. It was as if the house was shedding them. They were coming up from below. I barricaded myself in the attic. It was the one place the water hadn't reached yet. At least not fully. I dragged boxes, furniture, anything I could find in front of the door. I sat in the corner, flashlight beam shaking in my hand, phone clutched tightly in the other. I checked the time. 3:59 a.m. Something about that hour felt final. That's when I heard it, a storm drain gurgle, not from the bathroom or kitchen. Not from outside, but from inside the attic. The floor beneath me rumbled. Boards creaked and groaned, swollen, with dampness. A hairline crack split open across the wood, dark water seeping through. I shone my flashlight on it. And then I saw a drain pipe I didn't know existed, half hidden behind insulation and rotting beams. It looked old, older than the house itself, like it had been built here first. And from its mouth, black water began to pour, slow at first, then faster. Voices rose from the pipe, dozens of them layered atop each other like a twisted chorus of lost children. We remember you, Clara. You heard us. You belong here. The pipe gurgled, and something began to emerge. I stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of boxes. I tripped and fell hard, flashlight skittering out of reach. I scrambled in the dark, hands slick with the water spreading across the attic floor. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see what was coming out of that pipe. But I had to. The light flickered back on just in time to reveal a face. Bloated, bruised, eyes sunken and black, mouth stretched in a too wide smile. Its skin was translucent, waterlogged, tight across its skull like a mask pulled too tight. It crawled forward not, walking its limbs broken and bending the wrong way as it dragged itself toward me with sharp, deliberate movements. It opened its mouth. A torrent of filthy water spilled out. And inside the water I saw faces, dozens of them. Some screaming, some smiling, all staring at me. You let us in, Clara? Now we're part of you, I screamed. I don't know how long or how loud I just screamed until my throat bled. Then, in one blind rush, I grabbed the rusted pipe wrench from a box behind me and lunged forward, swinging it with everything I had. The wrench collided with the pipe. Crack. Water exploded in every direction. The voices screamed, shrieking like they were being torn apart. I kept swinging, smashing the pipe, the faces, the hands. Metal crumpled. Wood split. The attic floor gave way. I fell through. I landed hard, crashing into the hallway below in a pile of shattered plaster and soaked insulation, drenched, gasping, bruised. But the whispers were gone. The house was silent. No tapping. No giggling. No breathy calls of my name. Just ... silence. For the first time in days, I could hear the wind outside. The birds. The hum of the world returning. I sat up slowly, covered in muck and blood and water, and stared at the ceiling, waiting for the next whisper. None came. It was over. At least I thought it was. It's been 3 weeks since that night. 3 weeks since I smashed the pipe, fell through the attic floor, and felt the house go still. 3 weeks of silence, blessed, eerie silence. I've tried to put it all behind me. I've thrown out everything soaked in that black water, bleached every surface, slept in hotels, visited therapists. But no matter what I do, I can't shake one simple truth. The drain never left me. Even now, I hear water gurgling when no taps are on. I smell the rot sometimes in closed rooms. I've found wet footprints, tiny ones outside the bedroom door. And once, I swear I saw a child's handprint inside the steamed mirror after a shower. I wiped it away, but it came back. Each time, smaller, closer. Yesterday, I got a visit from a city inspector. I hadn't called for one. He just showed up, said there was a report about strange plumbing on the property. He stepped inside, scanned the kitchen, then the bathroom. He barely said a word until he looked under the sink. That's when his face changed. He stood up slowly. "Ma'am," he said, "do you know there's an unauthorized drainage line leading into your foundation?" I froze. What kind of line? It's, I don't know, he admitted, scratching his head. It's old. Really old. Predates the house, maybe even the street. It looks like it leads straight down into the earth. He paused, or something else. I asked him to cap it off. Destroy it. Fill it with concrete if he had to. He nodded and said he'd be back with the right equipment. That night, my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from an unknown number. No name, just static. And beneath the static faintly, "You shouldn't have shown them where we live, Clara." I didn't sleep. And sometime after 3 a.m., I heard it again. Tap. Tap. But it wasn't coming from the floorboards or the walls. It was coming from the kitchen sink. I stood there in the dark, staring at the basin, heart in my throat. Slowly, I crept closer, phone in hand, flashlight on. The sink was dry, but the drain was black, bottomless, like something was waiting just beyond the bend in the pipe. Then a voice. "We're lonely, Clara. Come sit by the drain." Just for a moment, it wasn't the same voice as before. Not the children. This one was deeper, angrier, as if something bigger was now stirring beneath the surface. I backed away, shaking, and bolted for the breaker box in the basement. If I couldn't destroy the drain, I could at least starve it of power, of warmth, anything it might feed off. But the moment I stepped into the basement, I froze. Because in the center of the concrete floor, a new drain had formed. A perfect rusted circle of cast iron where there had never been one before. And from it, I could hear laughter, dozens of voices, some familiar, some mine. I ran again. I left everything phone, wallet, keys. I just ran into the street, barefoot in the middle of the night, knocked on a neighbor's door until they let me in, sobbing. I told them I was being followed, haunted, chased by the pipes in my house. They nodded, sighed. I was exhausted, that I needed rest. But as I curled up on their couch, trying to breathe, I saw something that made my blood freeze. A puddle, spreading beneath the neighbor's kitchen sink. A small wet handprint in the middle of it. I live in a motel now. Off the interstate. Room 212. Bright lights. Thin walls. No drains in the floor. But even here, I hear it when everything's quiet. Tap, tap, tap. Sometimes I dream I'm back in the house, standing over the sink, looking into the drain. Sometimes I wake up with wet footprints on the tile floor. And sometimes, when I check my phone voicemails keep appearing, each one quieter than the last, each one whispering, Clara, you listened, and that was enough. The last voicemail had no voice at all. Just the sound of water, dripping, closer. Final scene tonight. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the bathroom door. It's cracked open. The sink faucet is off, but I hear it. Drip, drip, drip. Then the whisper. We followed. The pipes, Clara, all the way to you. I grab my bag. I head for the door, but as I swing it open, something is waiting on the other side. A storm drain, right there, embedded in the threshold, where the carpet should be. Water bubbles up, and from the drain, a voice gentle, now, patient, familiar. Don't fight us anymore. You've always been ours, as the light flickers. And the floor begins to ripple beneath my feet. I realize the truth. You can't run from the storm. Because the storm isn't outside anymore. It's inside the pipes. And it's hungry.